We are live, fellas. How y'all doing today?
Doing good, brother. How are you?
I'm
Life is
doing
great.
well, Brother Craig, Dr. Pugh. I'm
Hey
sorry,
man,
the Honorable J. Craig Gordon. I know you're a humble young man, sir.
the
The
honorable.
Honorable J. Craig Gordon. Doing that, sir.
That's that's what I'm gonna say too. Cause I seen it. I seen the flyer again. I was like, no, I'm gonna put honorable on that.
Ah, man, we letting the audience build up. Let me get to the live, y'all. We about 7 people right now.
All right.
Um, Everything weather looks good outside. I'm glad the rain done went away, made my grass turn green. I love all that other good stuff like that. Um, just enjoying life. It's gonna be a beautiful 4th of July weekend. I think
Definitely.
everybody's gonna be practicing social distancing with put mask on, hope nobody mask get burned up during the time they get out there on the grill cooking.
Yep. Hopefully
Now
people
that would
start
be a story.
switching. No.
All right. Well, today's topic, everybody. Today I got 2 great guests with me. Dr. Pugh has chose to be with us again, Dr. Christopher Pugh, and I got State Rep, my good friend, longtime ally, longtime supporter, J. Craig Gordon, also on the on the call. Our subject, we're gonna continue the conversation of sick, social injustice, controlling kids, collaborating with kids, whatever we want to say with the C. But today we want to talk about controlling kids because we just had a great opportunity to just arise last week, the hate crime bill, and we just want you to, Craig, give us all on the hate crime bill. We're also going to have some other questions in reference to social injustice, killing kids, or dealing with kids. And so, pretty much, can you give an introduction to yourself, Craig, and then also Pew?
Sure.
You can
You want me
start
to
with
go
you,
first or
Craig.
you want Doctor to go first?
Yes, sir. Go ahead,
Okay.
Craig.
All right, everybody. Well, first of all, Commissioner Man, thank you for having me. We go back 30 plus years. I'm so proud of you, brother, on what you have done in the past, what you're doing now, and what I know you're going to do in the future. I'm also honored to be in such fine company, man, because I know I'm going to learn something tonight from Doc. I guess to kind of get or dwell down hate crime legislation, which was 426. That bill passed the House, Georgia's House of Representatives in 2019, but stalled in the Senate chambers for almost 400 days to be exact. And probably if it had not been for the unfortunate, very public deaths of 3 to 5 African American men to include our brother Ahmad down in the Brunswick area, it probably still would be on somebody's desk. And so we hate that his family had to experience that loss, but we know that sacrifice hopefully will be paid forward in perpetuity with the um, lack of any other black man or woman being slain and in such a hateful manner. The bill itself is not the first time Georgia has had hate crime legislation. I think one of the biggest misnomers that the media has talked about is Georgia has been one of 4 states, I think, like South Carolina and 2 other states along with Georgia did not have hate crime legislation, but Georgia actually had hate crime legislation on the books up until I think 2004 or 2005. It was challenged in the Supreme Court by being unconstitutional based on some of the verbiages that spoke to what the injustices were and what prejudice actually was, and so it was stripped from the books. And so 16 years later, we have House Bill 426. What 426 does is basically give prosecutors the ability to prosecute under standards that a heinous crime was created maliciously based on somebody's race, ethnicity, um, gender, nationality, sexual preference, and probably 2 or 3 other things that the legislation says that have been obvious increases in our world or in our country, excuse me, over the last year. And I think statistically, we've lost almost 1,100 Black men and women to hate crime related issues, whether it was police violence or just bigots and racists over the last 10 years. So we hope that this serves as a deterrent. You know, as I've said before, you can't legislate morality, you can't legislate what's right and what's wrong, but we think that hopefully this sends the message that Georgia will not tolerate it and hopefully deter these heinous acts from happening again.
You on point as always, man. I gotta do better with this mute button, y'all. You on point as always, Craig. Marion, we already had an introduction last week, but you don't give us a soft introduction, reintroduction. We might have a new audience out here. Just go ahead and tell us what we talked about last week. Bring Craig up the code as far as what we need to do.
Gotcha.
Let's just have dialogue, y'all. We only got an hour now.
Gotcha.
I can't do like we did last week. Craig, last week we went 30 minutes over, and I was in my house. But I can't go 30 minutes over today, brother. So
I know it.
Got to be on point for this hour.
I mean, it was a good conversation. That means it was a good conversation.
Wonderful conversation. Yes, sir.
Hey, if Luther was on stage, nobody's complaining that he went 30 minutes in an encore.
Right. Especially if it was Uncle Luther.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna take us back, Craig. Go ahead, Dr. Pugh. Go ahead and enlighten us, brother.
All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Commissioner Jones, the most honorable J. Craig Gordon. Thank y'all for just lending your time this evening. Short and sweet to the point, my name is Dr. Marion Christopher Pugh from Atlanta, Georgia. I teach a diversity education course at Georgia Southern University. I'm also an educational consultant in Bullitt County and surrounding counties in the state of Georgia. Basically, last week we talked about social injustice, how it affects children. And I work with children for the vast majority of my profession. I either work with children or work with people who work with children. So I found out that all words that we use can either be used to build children or destroy. That's either or. There's no gray areas, no fence straddling, no anything like that. Either we're telling the truth to our children or we're lying with them with a hug. Or what's worse, lying to them with a referral. So what I do is just try to make sure that we have effective communication skills, and I help people to stop lying. That's it.
Stop lying.
Stop lying.
And that was a big piece we talked about last week, Craig. Just to stop lying. It's just people just stop lying. This world would be a whole lot better place if people just stop lying. It's just that simple. We try to make it simple as possible, brother. Stop lying. I mean that was the code language. So Craig, now that the hate crime bill has passed, what can we do to support you as far as community is concerned, to get the language out to the community, to hold DAs accountable, to hold lawyers accountable, whatever the case may be? What can we do now that you come out of session, it's coming to community? What can we do to make pathways to this language that we passed with the hate crime bill and make it where it's static, where we can actually start turning lives from, like you said, the young men who died on behalf of us having to wait 400 something odd days? What can we do now community-wise to help make this thing effective where we don't have to do 16 years of waiting on it?
So that's a great question, Commissioner Mann, and I think it's actually two different things. From the policy standpoint, the legislation, in my opinion, is a working gumbo, right? So you got the base of the gumbo, but think about what you want to go with it. You want cornbread, you want fried chicken. Like, we still need an elimination of stand your ground, and we still need an elimination of citizens arrest. And so really both of those should have been companion portions of 426, and it just was not the posture amongst the majority, meaning the Republicans, to put that in there. So I think we need to now start a campaign being paid forward to the next legislative session, which starts in January of 2021. And that key point of topic or contention needs to be, look, we need one bill that gets or eliminates stand your ground along with citizens arrest. So that needs to happen on the policy side. I think we can also begin conversations with all DAs and talk about, help educate them if they need it on the parameters that they can use to prosecute somebody through a vehicle such as 426. But I think the bigger part of the systemic issue, in my opinion, is I don't ever want that piece of legislation on the books from the criminal justice standpoint to ever be used, because I don't want to ever see or hear about another hate crime. So I think that's where you and Doc come in. You know, we've got to figure out what we can do to change the perception and the dynamic with children, that they don't grow up or end up in middle school or high school becoming bullies or assailants, so that 426 is ever needed. Because at a certain point, man, people are going to be who they want to be. In today's society, that's usually uncles, aunts, parents, and grandparents. So if they grew up racist and they were raised by racists, and daddy's friends was freely saying the N-word or anti-Semitic phrases or very inflammatory, words for the LGBTQ plus community, then kids are going to grow up thinking that that's the norm, and devaluing people based on who they want to love, who they want to marry, what religion they practice, and what color people like me and you and Doc and others have. Like, that automatically in their mind makes us less than them. And so that's got to stop. And so if we can't count on their parents and the people that are in their nuclear circle, to do the right thing, then we need to think outside the box and figure out how we can catch them at between ages 5 and 18 and change that dynamic, so they don't grow up to be, like the father and son that got Ahmaud, 45 miles from us.
And so what I heard, Chris, I'm sorry, Dr. Pugh, what I heard today was we need to be worried about, and I know we need to start working on these bullies. I'm hearing we need to start working on the bullies. So what kind of methodology, I guess from the study perspective or from your profession, how can we work at making sure that we don't have to use this language, is actually prevent language? But how do we get bullies to understand that the pathway they're choosing is going right there in the way he was saying? It's a negative society, negative pathway. How do we redirect that? Because you have all these other factors affecting to that bully status. Bullies usually have some kind of segue behind the closed door piece that makes them that bully. Whether it's hunger, whether it's desire to be in control, whether it's a loss of something, whether it's not a father figure there, or some kind of element in that whole atmosphere that's creating that bully. So what can we do? I'm asking you, Dr. Pugh.
In my experience, one thing that I've noticed in anybody who's a bully, the first step is to make sure that everybody who encounters that bully tells that bully straight up that we see you as such. Because what has happened is we will notice the bully, and then what we'll say is, well, he's just a bully. He needs to know better. But I'm going to be honest with you. Everybody must know better, but everybody's not held accountable. And I'm going to be honest with you. And, I do trainings, and, I go to classes and all of this good stuff. I'm going to tell you this. The universal teacher of all humanity is pain. The universal teacher of all humanity is pain. Everybody believes pain when they feel it. And the first thing they do is probably, if they don't know where it's coming from, they start wondering. So what's happening is when someone becomes a bully, they have never felt pain in their position. So until they feel pain, they're going to continuously live in that position until they feel it. Until they feel it, we're going to have to deal with our pain. So one of the things I'm finding out is our humanity is based off who's willing to put up with the amount of pain that they don't have to put up with in the first place. Because I'm going to be honest with you. When silence cosigns the violence, and all of us probably had some bullies, and some of us ended up being bullies and didn't even know it until somebody checked us. And guess what happened? It hurt. So I'm one of those people that I'm all for curriculum or strategic pain, but I'm not necessarily with abuse. Abuse is pain that's not even working. It's just pain just because. We just hurt people just be hurting. But any type of pain that actually leads somebody into a better spot mentally, and that will put them in a position that will force them to think. What's happening is many bullies are not even forced to think. Every time I'm at a school, and by the first time I go and talk to a person who's been labeled that bully, I always have a conversation with them, and the responses are minimal. I'm like, okay, well, so tell me why you did it. And that's my first question. Every time I ask them, why are you doing what you're doing? And one little boy told me, no one has ever asked me why. They just tell me to stop, or they ridicule me or punish me, but the punishment doesn't hurt. He doesn't feel pain from the punishment because he's so used to it. He's accepted a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's still not even pain. There may be ridicule, but guess what? Ridicule to a hurt person is also attention.
So that's what I was going to say.
Get what I'm saying? If they get ridiculed with no consequence, we're feeding it. So what's happening is we don't have a lack of training. And I'm a trainer. I tell people, look, I know what training is, but man, all of us know what to do and what not to do based off the pain we felt. The universal teacher of all humanity is pain. We know what not to do when it hurts too much. And what's happening is some people don't even know what it's like to feel pain. So why stop? So how I deal with bullies is let them know, I show them what the pain is. I may not put them in a painful position, but I have to educate them on what pain is, how they're actually putting it into the environment, and how that could actually circle back to them. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, every bully that has put out negative energy into the world has received it at some point in their lives. And most of them wish they received it when they were younger, because some of them are catching hell now in their 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Jesus. Piss poor preparation produces piss poor performance.
You already know.
Poor performance promotes pain. You got that? That's old school right there, Craig. You can write that one down. That's old school.
It's still relevant.
Piss poor preparation produces piss poor performance. Piss poor performance promotes pain. And so what I'm hearing, bullies actually don't even have to exist if we actually found out what the mechanism was creating the bully. And we resolved it from Jump Street. So now we're going backwards into we wanted to address the bully, now we address the bully. Neutralize the bully and making sure we dissolve the bully tactics, the bully mentality and stuff like that. And so, I'm gonna go off task. And one thing that's passionate to my heart, Craig, is the dropout rate. The dropout rate always been passionate in my heart because it was one thing. I think somebody tried to do it in legislature. I don't know when, but trying to, I guess, raise it from 16 to 17 to kind of create a narrative where you're keeping kids into that high school year where we'll put more programs, more activity as far as trying to keep them in, I guess, in school. I think with that age bracket at 16 years old, it kind of pushes the narrative of they're in middle school, and we're trying to push the fact that high school, we want to have a great high school graduation rate. If they make it into high school and then they drop out, it hurts that graduation rate. But if they don't make it into high school, of course, it don't affect that graduation rate. And, that's something that I've always been passionate about, especially in Savannah, Georgia, because I see a lot of young men in the 8th grade and, not really pushed to make it into the high school ranks because, once we get into high school ranks, we got to deal with them now. And so, you or Chris, either one, y'all don't want to hear my opinion about it today, but either one of y'all, give me some latitude on what you think about that as far as let's making sure we focus on the dropout rate because it affects the Black community worse than any other community out there. Because when it comes time for these people to go into workforce, they don't have a GED, they don't have a high school diploma, they don't have the basic needs to pass the math equivalency test or the English equivalency test. And so now it's a depletion on the workforce in our community, but these people still exist. They still got to eat. They still got to sleep. They still want them Jordans. They still got to have a roof over their head. So what do we do as far as, I guess, working toward curing that narrative as far as that dropout rate is concerned? Either one of y'all can talk, brother.
State Rep, I yield to you on this.
Well, y'all hold on 1 minute. My screen disappeared. Okay, I got it back. Somebody must have been calling my cell phone. So, yeah, man, I agree with you 110%, Commissioner. Mickey Stevens has had probably 3 bills that did exactly what you said. And then when he got sick, I tried in 2018 and 2019 to do the same thing, and mine was even a little bit more egregious. It was 18. It was you couldn't drop out unless you were 18. So because I felt like I was trying to marry it to the same age that we're saying people are have the aptitude to vote and serve our country. And so while we would let them make a decision 2 years prior to that, with something so detrimental to their life and to their future. And I'm sure Doc could chime in on data that, probably substantiates that when somebody does not have a high school diploma, they're more prone to, be incarcerated, to lead a life of poverty. Both, then you start talking about when you don't have a job and no, I have access to health care, what kind of effect that has on the mind, the body, and the soul. So, I mean, it turns into an onion of downturn side effects. I think when especially our Black men are dropping out of school at 15, 16 years old. I mean, the consequences are as clear as day. And so if we can't put or entrust in parents and some grandparents to be able to mandate that they stay in, then that's, I think, where you have the government that kind of comes in and sets that policy. But the problem is the majority party just does not see it in the same lens that we do in terms of importance.
One thing that I'm thinking about, and Craig Gordon, you said something that was extremely important, and I hope everybody listens to this. The main word that I took from you is access, right? And I always think of school as a sport, and all sports have winners and losers. And I tell kids every day in that classroom, it's a playoff game. And if you play to win, it's a huge possibility you could move forward to the next round. But if you don't win or you don't put your best foot forward, or if something out of your control happens, guess what happens? Somebody impedes your access, right? And so guess what? I always tell them, I say, look, a lot of times crime is based off who is left inconvenienced. If I have power and you're inconveniencing me by your stature, your look, your language, your culture, your whole being is a crime to me because my comfort is legal. My comfort is law. So what they may not understand is that sometimes I can put my personal perceptions as a policy to remain my power over people. They don't understand that most laws, and if you really start looking at it, when you said earlier, and I hope people get this, and I want you to repeat this soon, that you said all about legal legislation, all about legislation, there's like gumbo, right? And then you got to pick out what you want with your gumbo, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you got a lot of people who don't understand that they are allergic to several ingredients in that gumbo. They're allergic, and guess what's happening? Many of us are breaking out. And what's happening, we don't know we're allergic to the certain ingredients. So when we're getting fed the gumbo, we're just saying, well, you're resisting the gumbo. When in actuality, our humanity is allergic to the BS that's put into it. Mm-hmm. And if it's gumbo, guess what's happening? If our legal system is gumbo, state rep, we actually are unable, and it's impossible to see the real ingredients. That's how some people are actually getting sick. And so to the point where our dropout or our school leavers. Now, what I tell people this, it's one thing about dropping out, but I always, right, with me, and I told Commissioner Jones this last week, I am very careful about the words I use. So when I say drop out, I'm going to define it for the audience today. I can't define it for everyone, but I'm going to let you know what I mean by it. When a person drops out, because I got close friends that left school, they didn't drop out because they just didn't like school. They were fighting their peers, and I mean like emotionally, physically, mentally, academically, they were fighting their peers. And a lot of people who are dropped out, children already don't have voting power and political power like adults. And I told, Commissioner Jones and I talked about it last week. Children do not control where their body goes. So how in the world can we mandate you go to school but not mandate you stay? You know what I'm saying? It's a game being played with their whole being and their access. So by the time they leave school, because they have been butchered, they've been harassed, and they have literally been ostracized to the point where going to their institution could be detrimental to their mental health. Because I put it like this: I'd rather someone leave that school if a whole bunch of people in the school mistreat them. It's some kids that I've literally said, you might want to stay home for a couple of months. Based off the stuff that I heard they going through, asking them to keep coming back to that abuse like that, I'm a part of the problem. And I'm not telling them that they're supposed to stop going to school. I'm just saying stop going to that place that you're getting abused and nobody's saying anything. Because it's deeper than just dropping out. Some of them are literally being extracted and then being blamed for it.
No, I
So
think
I,
that's strong, Doc. I think that's
yeah.
immensely strong. And if I could just add to it, I think that
Mhm.
you know, in the commissioner has always been an advocate for this, man. We need to try to maybe take another look at beef up downstream or upstream wraparound services that
Mhm.
not just in schools but in neighborhoods,
Right.
apartment complexes, you know, youth centers. But I like them being in the school because
Yes.
that level of support can be made available in the morning before school starts, around lunchtime, or even after school periods, so that people can get some support, whether it's healthcare, mentally or physically, whether it's counseling, along with, you know, probably also looking at about maybe 7 to 10 years ago, the state adopted a policy that's kind of, I think it's called freedom of choice. So
Mhm.
if a parent or a student wants to go into a school and they're not zoned to be in that area, by law they have the choice if they can get there and the school has availability, excuse me, that they should be able to attend that school. So maybe that needs to be primed up so that students like you talking about, Doc, that are experiencing severe emotional and physical harm at their chosen school, they need to be put to the top of the list. Whether, you know, whether those slots are available or not, we need to make a slot for them, because we don't want the alternative to be not to go to school. We either want to solve the problem at that school if it's solvable, or we need to make sure that they got access in a clean pathway to another school.
100%.
So when so now you know I'm gonna segue to the next point. The next point we want to talk about. It was an interesting conversation. It always comes back and forth. I don't personally like the conversation, but based on what you were saying, Craig,
Mm-hmm.
what they call it, the area schools where you are schooled in your area, like
Oh yeah,
Hodge would serve
district
the
zone,
area.
yeah.
Um, community schools, that's what they call it, community
Mm-hmm.
schools.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on community schools? Because me personally, I had a heated discussion about it. My thing about community schools is this: I don't have an issue with it. If they were treated fairly and just, if but at the same time, understanding that Hodge needs a different set of resources than what Hurd would need, and Hurd would need a different set of resources Windsor Forest would need, and Windsor Forest would need a whole different set of resources from Marsh Point, and so on and so forth. And all the different schools would need different sets of resources, and it wouldn't be just resources that come from that particular community. It would have to be resources that come from the whole structure piece. And with the understanding that Title One dollars, the special dollars that actually went to those Title One schools, making sure that those Title One schools did the extra mile. And I'm not saying doing that right now, but what is y'all thought process as far as community schools are concerned, and what things can we do? What are pros and cons as far as them?
State Rep, I'm gonna yield to you because I want to get some more context to community schools before I respond.
And I was gonna say the same
Well,
thing to you,
before I,
Doc.
Okay.
okay,
uh,
so
Because
community
I heard
school
you.
is old. I'll give you this then. Community
Okay, I'll
school is an
start.
old school concept. You
Oh,
heard me?
so, yeah, I got you.
It's
is
old school
community
concept.
schools the
It's
same thing as what we would call neighborhood schools?
yeah, same thing. It's just a new name
Boom.
for it. It's
Oh,
community
okay.
school.
Okay.
So
Neighborhood school, community schools,
yeah,
same thing.
Beacon
It might,
School
maybe
instead of a
maybe
neighborhood
I
school.
done adopted and changed the naming of it. I mean, I'm sorry, but neighborhood schools, schools that's in the neighborhood, schools that's in that community,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
schools that kids can walk to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm when we look at the numbers, I like to see change. I like to see the odds. I like to see Hodge be performing at the same level as the Islands or Marsh Point or one of these schools. And I understand for that to happen, you're going to have to envelop different sets of resources, more wraparound services, making
Right.
sure that those kids, when they go to school, they get a meal in the morning, a meal during school lunch, and then a meal even going out the door. So when they going home, they're not hungry. They're not hungry when they sleep, and they're not doing devious things.
Right.
Making sure we have the wraparound services with providing technology resources in those areas.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
mean,
I get what
I just want to make sure that the neighborhood schools, I'm gonna correct myself, neighborhood schools are those environments where if we want to make it where neighborhood schools is where we need to go, then we need to make sure those environments are conducive to produce kids who are on the same level as any other school across the county. Did y'all get that now?
Yeah, I got that. I got that. So I've heard of neighborhood schools. I did hear that. So I wanted to make sure I had it right. So my response to what you told me, I think is going to be imperative for where we're going now because of our current year, our current situation, right? So right now we're finding out that a lot of the students who are in schools, um, we're finding out about their actual personal interactions with that environment, meaning the teachers, the administrators, different coaches, different people from that community coming in. Because if you have a specific community or the neighborhood, your thought process doesn't just check itself at the door before you walk into those schools, right? So all children are subjected to the ideas and the thought process of the adults that surrounded them, right? So if we're going to have a neighborhood schools, we may need to educate people on what a neighborhood is. See, a lot of people like to use words and may not understand exactly what they're supposed to do. I'll put it like this. A lot of people will know what to do if they know what's supposed to be done. And I think a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this too, because I'm a part of this conversation, right? I will say, hey, we need more X, Y, and Z. Then I have to check myself. I said, well, I am one of the we. So if I'm having a suggestion, why don't I provide a solution? So I think for a specific neighborhood school, and I just throw this out there for everybody, I think what I'm going to start doing, and anybody can join in, I'm talking about across the board, to hold themselves accountable. Every time you have a suggestion, you may need to be responsible for the solution. I think that will be helpful for me creating that neighborhood school, because right now, if I can just come up and just start saying, hey, it's almost like a person like, hey, you got something on your shirt. And you say, where? You can be like, hey, man, you just got something on your shirt. like now you're not even trying to help me. You're just telling me what's wrong. And if you're just telling me what's wrong without trying to help me, guess what? Now you're a distraction. Because if you're just constantly telling me what's wrong without giving a solution, now you're part of the problem, because you may even be lying to me. It's probably nothing on my shirt. You just bringing something up just to antagonize me, right? So if I'm going to be a part of this neighborhood, and if I see something like Commissioner Jones, you're talking about, like, I know you're very heavy on mentoring and fatherhood initiatives, right? So say, for instance, I'm a father in the community. I got my own children, but I go outside, I see kids out there playing, and I do not speak to them. My fatherhood initiative, like anytime that I interact with people outside my household, it affects my household, because they're outside of my house. They're watching me go in and outside of the house. And everybody remembers a person that deliberately did not speak to them. Everybody remembers it. So guess what happens? I can be doctor this, coach this, pastor this. And if I didn't intentionally enhance my neighborhood by being neighborly, everything is down the drain. Some people know the word neighbor and don't even know what a neighbor is supposed to do. Some people think that the only thing I got to do is just live next to you and that's it. A neighborhood school is not just people who live next to each other. It's people who live with each other. And that's just something that I'm looking at. That's my response to what you're saying.
Okay. Craig, you got anything to add to that, brother?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think he said a wealth of information, and I'm a product. I think all the schools I attended as a kid, all of them were public schools, by the way. And I think the only school that I maybe fundamentally didn't go to that was a quote unquote neighborhood school would have been Bartlett. But when I think about Pulaski being in the middle of Sylvan Terrace, Haven Elementary being in the middle of Tatumville, Beach High School being almost in the middle of, or Catacorner to Can Park, the neighborhood school experience is my school experience. I think that I don't know that I can speak intelligently on a disparity of funding that one school in one area may get that another school in another area may not get. I just don't, unfortunately, know our local numbers like that. Maybe that's something that we can talk about on another forum. But I'm assuming that the world is just in that a school in Can Park is getting the same amount of resources that a school, let's say, on one of the islands is getting. Then the only thing that I would change at that point would be, I think when we say wraparound services, sometimes people think that it's something that's going to be a huge extenuating cost already on the Chatham County Public School System's budget, which is already moving in a lot of different areas so that we can make sure schools are clean and safe and teachers and staff and everybody else is being paid. But I see wraparound services to a certain degree as folk in that neighborhood giving back that may be retired coaches and educators and principals and doctors, lawyers, newspaper journalists, what have you, just people who bring a hodgepodge of experience that want to contribute to that neighborhood school. But I also seen involvement with the private sector where, I don't know, maybe there's some kind of RFP out there and you got, I hate to compare it to the jail, but when I think about the jail, I think about I think they've got like a healthcare contract, and that one healthcare entity is responsible for dental, is responsible for, emergency response and, maybe even mental health. So, if we could look at maybe some sort of pilot experiment where you got 3 schools, you got that whole level of neighborhood environment, and then you've got people in there that can build AmeriGroup, they can build Blue Cross Blue Shield, they could build WellCare. So you got the state insurance and you got private insurance, and they're there throughout the school period. So they're there from 6 to 8 hours a day, providing from a professional standpoint those services. It isn't necessarily taxing the Board of Education, and hopefully it's billable services that the parents don't have to come out of pocket for. And then if there is a safety net of children who, God forbid, for whatever reason, don't have any level of health care, then maybe there's some sort of, fund that the business community has come up with, or maybe that comes from the Board of Education of the state to kind of facilitate that gap. But going back to what Doc said, I'm trying to address a problem, but not just pointing to it on your shirt saying, hey, this is the problem. We got 100 kids in this school that can't concentrate because guess what? They've never been to a dentist, and maybe they never went to a dentist because they never had the availability to go to. So you trying to tell Johnny to tell me the definition of an adjective or a verb or a noun, and he got 3 rotten teeth. You know what I'm saying? He in pain. Last thing he want to know is talk about conjugating something or Newton's law, relativity or algebra. So we got to triage the fact that he's 10 years old and never been to a dentist, or he's 12 years old and never had a physical. He may have a bunion or something even more severe. But I don't think we even have the ability to pull back the layers of the onion to figure out why some kids, boys and girls of all colors, are acting out, because we don't know if it's bullying. We don't know if it's mental or physical health care or hodgepodge of both. So I think the way you address that is you bring it to the core, which is the school.
Yep. The school is the heartbeat of the community.
So I'm gonna give you some points out there that was said in the chat. Many what you talked about, Craig, mentioned is already offered in the schools. Partnerships that have already been formed. So I did want to. Ms. Angie Lewis said that.
Good.
We have to take into account for personal experience before educating. That was said in the chat. Our students' personal lives matter just as much as their education. The concept of neighborhood schools is an old one that has been redefined. A neighborhood school is one that serves. They wrote a whole bunch of stuff over. That serves the neighborhood. That includes the student, the parent, the stakeholder. Right. It is a meeting place for the community. It is staffed by people who don't run out the doors with the buses. The hours of operation is a time that is beneficial to the neighborhood. It is open on Saturdays for events for the neighborhood focus. Open house is not at 4 to 5 on Tuesday. Open house is not 4 to 5 on Tuesday. If the students have a problem with math, there's a math class to introduce parents to what the student is doing. I know and hope this is going on in the lower grades, but it should happen 9 through 12.
Yeah.
We need to go into the community and have better understanding of our students and parents.
True.
So basically, I want to make sure it's understood. When I say wraparound services, I don't just I put it on the school. When I say wraparound service, I'm talking about community. I'm talking about the county. I'm talking about the city. I'm talking about the parents. I'm talking about grandmama, grandpapa, auntie, aunt. I'm talking about everybody. I say wraparound service. I'm talking about making sure we have counselors in staff mode over there to make sure that these problems that these kids face are taken care of. I'm making sure that the lunch attendant who snuck me that extra cookie or that extra milk is available there too. Wraparound services is the whole conundrum. It's not just focusing just on school. It's the whole picture because a lot of times we forget. I think I went to Hodge. Now, mind you, we lived on the south side, but I went to Hodge and I went to Durin. So how you came to Bartlett, I went to Durin, and I never understood that. We
Yeah.
drove past Bartlett to go all the way to Durin. I never understood that, and I think it has something to do with you wanted to mix the schools.
Yeah.
You want to have a good mixture of the schools. I know when I was growing up, that was the area I grew up in was mixed community. It was majority, 70% white, Caucasian, 30% African American. Now it's right at about 80-90% the opposite way around. And so you can kind of tell that a lot of people are being pushed out my direction. And the South Side is changing. The complexion of the South Side is changing completely. But I think one thing we got to focus on is making sure that our schools are meeting the modern day efforts of what we got going out there. And I'm gonna tell you right now, my next subject is gonna touch everybody on this call. COVID-19. How is COVID-19 gonna change all this stuff we just talked about? How is it gonna change it?
Well, I'll put it like this. One thing that I've realized with COVID-19 or the quarantine or whatever anybody, how they understand it, people have been, all of our hardest working people in education have been realized and highlighted. And our people in education who don't want to be there anymore, they've been exposed. So it's been like a great, I would say, unveiling some kind of way, because it's almost like this. If you didn't want to teach kids and you were overworked inside the school, and all of a sudden the school closes down and you're still complaining about not having, time to teach kids when you're literally at home now, you're still finding more excuses. Where some teachers and administrators and parents, their main concern was they didn't have enough time, and now they do have enough time to spend with the kids and actually do certain things. What has happened is, and I can't point the finger, but I am pointing at what I'm looking at, is this really exposed the inner character of a lot of people. So when it comes down to COVID-19, what we're going to see moving forward is that now we're going to be able to look at and pinpoint who really actually wants to be there. Now, we've always knew it, but now we can really start documenting and say, look, if it's just online and you're still not engaging anyone, and the only thing you got to do is just literally log on, now we're finding out. And if you're really like recording your classes and all these different things, people are finding out a lot of people have never been teaching in their classes. Really find it, because right now you can't record in the classrooms, but now you can record on Zoom, though, can't you? So now guess what happens? Because of COVID, all of the cameras that were not allowed in the schools or inside of the classroom, COVID put a camera in every single classroom. So now the real teachers are having a ball. They are just, I'm talking about, they're doing so many different random things where, all right, I don't have to, I have all my kids here, but I can't. I talked to a teacher over the summer about their experience. She was like, well, my kids were not interrupting because I was just flowing and they were attentive. She like, that was the first time they're not next to each other, playing with each other, and our interaction actually went through the roof. She had a ball, and she ended up teaching more than she ever hoped for. Wow. And you have other teachers, you have other educators who found, you either going, Commissioner Jones, you taught me this a long time ago, you're going to find an excuse or you're going to find a way. But anybody who's looking going to find something they're looking for, right? So what's happening is this situation is exposing what everybody was looking for since day one.
You got anything for it?
Man, I don't know how to compete with that. that was highly educational. I told y'all at the beginning of the call, man, I was going to learn something from this call. I would just send a message to the parents and the students and the teachers, man. First of all, to all, hats off, man, to all of the teachers, like Doc is saying, who are excited about using this as an opportunity to dig deeper and use Zoom and the internet and the captivity of this platform to do stuff that they didn't have the ability to do in the classroom. My heart goes out to the parents whom are in a situation where their jobs predicate that they can't be home, and it's hard for them to figure out. It's kind of like a fork in the road. They don't want their child to be in a school physically. They want to, exercise the virtual option, but the child's 9 years old. So what do you tell a parent or two parents that both have to be at a place of work, Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday, but the child isn't, old enough to be left alone, especially a child that may even have some extenuating pre-existing conditions like asthma and a whole list of things. So I don't know that I have the answer to any of that outside of the fact that it's a problem. It needs to be addressed. I think that adults, not just in our city, but just across the country to some degree, are looking the other way, that COVID even exists in the first place, and then we got folks who think it's a hoax and a conspiracy theory, and people are dying. When I do the math, it's about 5% of the people who test positive don't make it through. So for every 100 people that get or excuse me test positive for COVID, 5 of them die. And so when you start talking about, let's just say Chatham County had 100 a month, what's that, 60 people, 60 funerals at the end of the year that may not have had to happen if everybody had a mask on, or didn't have to go to the park to do this, or didn't have to go to the mall to do that. But we did it because we got tired of sitting in a house. I mean, I really can't fathom why we have not been sheltering and masking as diligently as we should have. And again, not to go back to a 180, but even from when we were having a conversation about the hate crime bill 426, children emulate for the most part what they see from their parents. And so if they see mama and daddy not taking this thing serious and not wearing a mask and just carrying on in the world like as if we're not under a pandemic, then they're not going to be prone to do that. And so I cannot understand why going to the club or hanging out in a park or walking on River Street is more important than the preservation of humanity.
Well, you know what? We at the 10-minute stretch, y'all. Believe it or not, 50 minutes has already passed us
Oh
by.
wow.
Oh yeah, time flies when you're having fun. They told me that a long time. But there's one thing I want to leave us with. One thing I want to talk about. You talked about this before, Chris. Me and you do a salutation on it all the time. Now this last 10 minutes is gonna be grinding. Y'all about to smile what I'm about to say. Every time I call either one of y'all brothers, and this is a very important piece. Every time I call either one of you brothers, I always end the salutation with "I love you." And I think in our community we don't see enough of brothers saying "I love you" to each other. And part of that reason why I make sure I say "I love you" to y'all too, because be honest, beyond repair, I do love y'all as brothers. Ain't nothing homophobic, ain't nothing all that other stuff like that. I love y'all as brothers because the simple fact is, I know if I called you at boom o'clock time in the morning and you get the call that if you sleep, I know you sleep. But the first thing you're gonna do in the morning, yo, did you mean to call me? Did you butt dial me? Did you check on me? One thing about both of y'all is y'all will call me, check on me, y'all will text me, bug me, and everything else like that.
Yes.
And I really mean it, bro. I love y'all to death because of that, man. Because you know what? A lot of times we don't put that in the community, how brothers should love each other. And then once again, it ain't got nothing to do with being homophobic, has everything to do with the fact of being genuinely caring for each other as men and the welfare of us in the community. And I think that's a destructive part in our community. We don't see enough brothers showing that true embracement of love. And so I just want to make sure I close out these last 10 minutes to tell y'all I'm extremely proud of y'all. Love y'all to death. Craig, now Craig, Chris Pugh is my new baby brother. You always been my baby brother. But Chris Pugh is my new baby brother. The last 15 years, this dude has been, he's been listening, sowing seeds in me, man. He's been teaching me. And you know, the 14 years you've been on my ass. And that's the only cuss word I'm gonna say on this thing. You've been on my ass about running for office, and I ran and I enjoy it. A lot of people don't know about me and you having those dialogue and conversation when we were 14, 15 years old, y'all. 14, 15 years old, when we was out there selling donuts. You know, I always got to tell our story,
Yeah,
dog.
man.
We were out
Yeah.
there selling donuts, and we were out there talking about how we were going to
Washing
run the
cars.
world and how we were going to change the world, brother. And so go ahead, Craig. I'm done talking. Go ahead, Craig. Go ahead and say what you're going to say.
No, I'm good, man. Man, you know that cultural sensitivity is real, and you right, man. We have to publicly acknowledge the love for each other, and again, it goes back to, young people seeing what we're doing and recognizing that it's okay to say that, and then they pay it forward or pay it downward to their peers and not feel like they embarrassed or ostracized. So no, man, I don't have anything to comment, but I'm with you 110%, brother. Always gonna support you. Love both of y'all, and I don't feel bad that I'm not the only little brother anymore.
Chris, what you got to say on that, man? Let's close this out, brother.
Well, trust me, I'm the little brother. I will not be stealing your clothes because I'm pretty sure y'all don't wear 3X and above.
Yeah. If you try to put my clothes on, you're gonna be looking like Bruce Banner after Incredible Hulk
Terry
session.
Crews.
Exactly.
Terry Crews in this thing.
Exactly.
I don't know what this. I don't know. I'm gonna go back and look at the feed. If we need to
Yeah.
redo it, we'll do it next week. I mean, when we're virtual and outside of my comfort zone, it kind of gets stretched out. I did see it with some spaces where the video was stretched out, or whatever the case may be. If it doesn't look like it did good, then we're gonna do a round two next week.
Yeah.
If possible, to keep things moving. Go ahead, Chris.
I did want to just comment on, because we started off talking about the hate crime bill, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did want everybody who's listening tonight, and State Rep Brother Craig Gordon, you said something that was very, very key that a lot of people need to understand. The analogy, and I love when our elected officials talk in a way that people can understand. And I really appreciate you using examples so people can relate to what you're saying. Because some people, even if you know it's legal jargon or it's lingo gumbo, people don't say that. Mm-hmm. And that's invaluable, that you're going to come to the people and say, look, I'm in the battlefield. I'm actually working with these tools, and I'm telling you, it is confusing, right? And that's gold, the fact that you actually came out here and told us that. So now, hopefully, when we're hearing that, it's going to help us do our due diligence to go and look at the words that are used to describe some of these laws. Mm-hmm. One thing I will give a question to our audience is, and a rhetorical question, if we blame our kids for being too emotional, why we expect them to obey laws that are emotional? If we're going to blame our children for being emotional, and we're looking at a hate crime bill, which is literally based in emotion, how are we going to really educate them off of emotion only? Where's going to be the logic if we're using words without clear definitions? And my last but not least, if it's a hate crime bill, I know sometimes people want to try to prove that someone hated them. Right now, we're going to start trying to point the finger at people who hate themselves and just acting like other people.
That's strong. That's deep.
That's real strong. Well, bro. I'm loving the dialogue. We're gonna keep this train rolling. Keep this train rolling. Craig, I don't know what you got up in next in January, but guess what, brother? I'm retired January 1 too. So maybe we need to go play golf.
Hey,
Let's go
man,
get a
I'm
yacht.
with
Let's go get a yacht and take a week off and go sailing or whatever case may be. Come January 1, we're gonna have our freedom papers, brother. It's nothing negative people out there, but we'll have our freedom papers, man. Bro, hey man, I've been thinking COVID-19 is over. I want to bring Atlanta to Savannah, brother. I've been on it real hard. Chris, you laughing. I'm dead serious. Chris, I want to bring Atlanta to Savannah. I want to bring that culture. I want to bring a new vibe to Savannah, Georgia, man. I am so hyped and amp about January 1 just changing the culture of Chatham County, Savannah,
Right.
and bringing that essence of in Atlanta the last 25 years. I know you got in your head, Craig. I ain't
Hey,
life.
man. Like, it's funny that you said what you said just now, man, about bringing Atlanta to Savannah in the culture. Because obviously, man, everybody knows I bleed Savannah, man. You
Yes,
catch
sir.
me with a knife and blood ain't gonna come out. It's gonna be garlic butter, you know, like
Yes, sir.
I mean, but I was like, I remember I was in a beautiful restaurant, man. That's where actually where Goody Mob and them shot the Soul Food video years ago. And I was there about 3 years ago, man. And I ain't gonna lie, I was ear hustling. It was these older African American females. They were probably sitting the table behind me, yeah, because my back was to them, and they literally were having an argument, not about their grandkids who got into what school or who got what car, whatever. They were arguing about both of them taking credit for helping a young brother and his wife get into the airport in Atlanta, and how many millions of dollars that this couple was making. And both of them were trying to take credit for it. And I was just thinking to myself, man, we got to change the mentality down here, man. It's like, it is a certain virus, if you will, of folk who just that state this whole like crabs in a barrel kind of thing. Like, he got that or she got that, so she doesn't deserve anything else, or he don't deserve that, or why is he trying to do this? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you got people over here having an argument about not growing wealth, in Savannah, and somebody having too much. And 3.5 hours away, I'm looking at two sisters having an argument, but also celebrating the accomplishment,
At the same time.
of a husband and wife under 30 years old doing, 17, $20 million a year. Like, something is wrong. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't get it.
Man, we're gonna talk about that in July, later on in July, because
To be
we're gonna have
continued.
that conversation. We gotta have that
Yes.
conversation, brother. We gotta have it.
Yes.
Brothers.
Yes.
Chris, we're gonna do the abbreviated version so we can let Craig know how we do this. Everybody, my family is doing well. Chris, my family is walking around the car like a vulture, trying to get in the car. And so my family is doing 100% well. I know Miss Erica's doing well. I know the family's doing well. Craig, I know by the house. I'm gonna stop by the house when I come back next. I promise myself I'm gonna come
Okay.
by and check on Dad. And y'all know they're happy to see me. And he's still the only person, Chris. He's still the only person who still called me Rev.
Oh, okay.
Y'all
Okay.
still call me Rev, dog.
That's
No
what's up.
lie.
That's
He
what's
still
up.
call me Rev. What's going on, man? I'm glad you come by and check on me, man. And he always got a magazine for me, and he always trying to teach me something, man. I love that. I love that brother to death, man. So I'm gonna make
That's
sure I make it
real.
a point to come by and check him out next week when I come by. I checked out your brother last week, so I guess it would be only fair if I checked out Pops. And I saw your big brother Chuck was on the thing earlier. I don't know if he's still on here, but Chuck was on the thread earlier.
Oh, he was on the thread.
And he was
Okay.
on the thread earlier. Well, love y'all. I gotta hang up, y'all, because I'm trying to make sure I have good living arrangements.
Yeah. Take care home.
But brother, this is not gonna be in the conversation. We're gonna continue what's going on. Maybe not
Gotcha.
next week, but we'll make sure we make it moving forward. And Craig, I mean that. Let's go ahead and plan something in January of 2021. All
I'm in,
right. With
man.
that being said,
Great.
peace, my
It was a
Have a
pleasure.
safe holiday, man.
Thank y'all, man.
always.
It was a pleasure.
Pleasure all mine.